Hello, and welcome to the first in this mini-series on communications, great answers to tough questions at work. And in this session, we're focusing on how to give great answers to those tough questions everyone gets in the business world. The kind of questions you face at job interviews and career appraisals, through to tough questions from clients, prospects, stakeholders, and the boss. Of course, as tough questions within companies tend to rise to the top, if you're the boss, you probably get more tough questions than most, both from outside and inside. And to help us through this, I'm joined today by one-time journalist Michael Dodd, who is used to asking politicians, leaders, and others what they call in his homeland Australia, blowtorch-on-the-belly questions. These days, Michael Dodd helps people answer these questions in London, where he's now based, and at conferences and in masterclasses around the world. He's the author of Great Answers to Tough Questions at Work, which was shortlisted by the Management Book of the Year Award by the Chartered Institute of Managers. So, Michael, welcome.
Welcome. So, I thought I was going to start by asking you a tough question, like, why don't you resign, or something like that, because they do get pretty tough sometimes.
Well, that's an example of exactly what we'd like to talk about now. What kind of tough questions are you talking about for the challenges that you see for?
Well, for those who get to the top, the resignation question is often the big one. But for those starting off in their careers, then it's getting your first job. And answering questions at job interviews at any stage, such as, why should we employ you in this job when there's other candidates with more experience?
Absolutely.
Or the typical one in the marketing world is, well, why should anyone buy from you when Fred down the road is providing the same thing at half the price? And so what I help people with is dealing with those and trying to get across a positive message every time. Because the danger is you get trapped in those, will you resign, why should I buy from you kind of questions, and you're on the back foot.
Yeah.
And the real learning point for a lot of people is that if you plan for it, prepare for it, and practice for it, you can get, however tough, however much of a blowtorch on the belly question it is, you can get across a positive message.
So you're saying there is a kind of technique, a toolkit that you can prepare yourself with for all kinds of tough questions, whether they're at the top or whether at the middle, whether they're sort of daily tough question, why is the coffee machine running out, or whatever it is.
Well, it can be that one, yeah. Why isn't the stationery cupboard full of pens like it should be? It's your job? All those kind of things. So yes, I can't answer each of those questions individually for people, but when I'm working with them, what I can do is give them the golden formulae for answering them. And there's two. We might talk about both. One is for a typical straight-on blowtorch on the belly question, and the second one is where something's gone terribly wrong and something bad has happened and people are emotionally upset.
Right. And
in that case, you need a different formula, but you can learn the formula and put them into action, whatever your tough question is.
So can you give us a little bit of an idea what the difference is between the two approaches, how you can make yourself more ready?
Well, the first one, which is for most tough questions that you get anywhere in the workplace, is a straight one where you answer the question up front, but then you move on, get across your message, and typically give an example. Paint a picture in the mind of the person who's asking the question, or the wider audience, as there could be if you're on TV or if you're in one of those town hall electronic meetings or something, and put that picture in people's minds in a way that the last thing you say in your answer is a positive picture. So that's the first one. And the second one, when something's gone terribly wrong, it's different from the first because you're always dealing with human beings, and human beings can be very emotional. And if something's gone wrong, such as, how come my child got injured on the school excursion when you were the head teacher who booked the bus or something, then you can't use that first formula of just answering it and moving on. You've got to deal with the emotional side of the situation.
Right.
If you don't do that, you can look callous. Even if your answer on paper is brilliant, it won't work for real human beings. So when something's gone terribly wrong, the first thing you need to do is talk to the heart before you talk to the head. So you've got to say, how concerned you are about the situation, or in some cases, you often want to check this with the boss, but you may even want to apologise. You've got to be careful how you do an apology, because you don't want to admit liability in a way that your lawyers are going to clobber you, but you need to connect with the other person and get them to understand that you appreciate it's a terrible situation, whether it was your fault or whether it wasn't. And that's really important if you're trying to have a positive impact on people.
So you would say that genuine empathy is an important part of this approach for the, when you're dealing with a more emotional situation.
Yes.
Not pretend empathy, right?
But well, no, it's got to be real. There is that
real
line, which don't adopt this one, David.
Yeah.
If you can fake sincerity, you can get away with anything. But don't do that. But real empathy is one of the fundamentals, particularly on the more emotional ones. But often there's questions sort of in the middle range between a straight factual question and one with an emotional edge. And often empathy is the key to that. Let me give you an example. And that is a guy in the Midlands in the UK who ran a factory, and we were doing a session on answering tough questions. And his tough question was something like, are our jobs safe? And it was a time when the economy was dipping. And so we got him to reenact what he did. We got some of the other people in the workshop to be the workers. He was doing his normal walk around the factory floor. They asked him, are our jobs safe? And his answer was no. Nothing else. So he didn't empathize with them about the fact that they were worried about their future, nor did he get across a positive message.
Amazing.
Yeah, and what he, he improved a lot in the session.
Yes.
When we actually,
he would definitely need to, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you have to say a bit more. And that's a perfectly honest answer. Give the guy 100% for honesty. But the effect that he had, which obviously he didn't empathize with, the question is enough, was that he had to realize that he should have been saying something like, look, I'm really sorry, it's tough times, and the jobs are not as safe as I'd like them to be. But then he could have gone on, which were true, because we cross-examined him on the situation, and we got him to go on in the answer and say something like, but we're doing a number of things in order to boost our markets overseas to make the jobs as safe as we can. And he gave an example then of how they were tapping into the Chinese market, and also gave another example of how at a previous stage in the company they had to lay people off, but that then they hired them back at more money as soon as things got better. So it was a matter of making the company as safe as possible during the recession, and there could be good news at the end. And those answers scored a lot better with the group. And when he tried it out for real, the same thing, I believe.
Well, thank you for that fascinating overview of how you approach tough questions and give great answers. Thanks very much for this to Michael for a fascinating overview, as I said, and look out for Michael's further take on communications in the rest of this mini-series at Disruptive Live.